with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. Big show. Wednesday is here, Chad. Wednesday is here.
Said we never get there. We've made it. Made it to the middle of the week.
Bobby Carpenter will join us coming up in 20 minutes.
There's nothing mid about Bobby Carpenter, by the way.
Or Clay Travis, who joins us in an hour right here on the OutKick network. We hope you'll subscribe to the OutKick channel on YouTube and much more. Jim Williams, the media guru, I say this because he's the consultant that all of the networks go to learn about what they should or should not do. They ask him about television contracts. Jim Williams joins us coming up in an hour and a half. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Apparently all the presidents and ADs in the Big Ten should have gone to Jim Williams to maybe read the fine print of the contract they were signing, because there's a lot of bitching and moaning going on after the fact from the Big Ten, and I'm not overly sympathetic to these Big Ten chancellors that now suddenly are realizing that, but wait a minute. We used to have say over night games in November, and now you're saying we don't?
But how does that happen?
You signed the contract.
How does that happen? Where you have...
I think it's just...
You have presidents and ADs who are acting like they didn't know what Kevin Warren did.
I think what goes on...
What?
This is not right, but I'm going to tell you my theory on what happens in these deals.
Okay.
I think they get a commissioner in, much like Greg Sankey in the SEC. I think there's so much over-trust in the commissioner that they know exactly what they're doing.
Not with Kevin Warren.
And what's best for the conference.
Coming out of COVID.
And what's right. I think that they just take the recommendation, and here's what else they get blinded by. The dollar figures. They see it and they think, oh, we're going to make this much more? Okay, where do I sign? Oh, this isn't going to be anything crazy, right? Oh, no, nothing crazy. Don't worry about the fine print. Sign right here, and you're going to make X amount more every year in media revenue. But so did
Kevin Warren.
And then
Kevin Warren was bonused based on the media rights contract. That's the other kicker here with that. So I don't know how it happens without the approval of the ADs and specifically the presidents or chancellors.
I don't either.
And by the way,
it's crazy to me that it just doesn't immediately go to legal.
We have talked about a $100 million
right?
per year deal, right? For how long? And the networks are cool with us saying that too?
Yeah,
it's been all quiet, and now all of a sudden it's headline.
It's baffling that a deal this big could go through and that people, first off, only apparently one layer of the contract has been signed. There's a second part that needs to be signed. Yes. And now there's all this. There's a lot to get into. It's a mystery as to how it went down.
All they do is sign contracts. That's all they do.
But they shouldn't even do it. My point is, how does it not just go to your lawyer?
I know.
There's a counsel for every school. I mean, if I'm the chancellor at Illinois, and I get, here's the new Big Ten media rights deal. Here's a 30-page document of legalese for this contract that we're supposed to sign, that we're all going to agree on together. I'm not even looking at it. I'm handing it to my legal department, telling me if there's anything that's inconsistent with prior contracts.
Right.
I want to know that first. It's called delegating responsibility. It's a good thing to do. Is there anything I need to know about that's different from other contracts? How much more money are we making? What am I looking at? And then I'll make the decision. I don't know how they just unilaterally say, oh, Kevin Warren said it's okay. Let's sign it. Let's move on with it.
I'm watching promos on NBC about the Big Ten playing at night.
Yeah.
And the contract is not officially signed.
It's going to be Northwestern and Indiana playing at night, apparently.
Point being, they're running promos about it as if everything's signed. They're also to blame in the confusion here.
Well, it's...
Like, everyone's going to get paid one way or the other.
What is the initial, there's so much language in these reports.
NBC wants Ohio State, Michigan, and
I know what they want. I'm saying, what is an initial contract has been signed, but not the whole contract?
I think
for years, remember that was the
carry
old,
the conference.
Remember the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding a coach would sign?
No doubt.
Some would never sign a full contract. They would just have an MOU, which is legally binding. I think once you sign any layer of the contract, to me it's... Unless the other half didn't author it.
Again.
We'll get into it.
The only thing that is certain is
we're not lawyers. We're just smarter than most.
If you're an NBA player, you're getting paid, guaranteed. No matter if you show up in Game 4, Game 3, Game 7, doesn't matter. Chad, the Celtics finally showed up. They are.
I want to.
This is a mirage. They actually saved the NBA. This is like a mercy killing.
Yeah. We
because
get 2 more days of conference finals.
the NBA finals start a week from tomorrow. So the fact that we have another game saves the NBA with something. It's not going to be good. And if they win again, then it's fool's gold.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to applaud the Boston Celtics for, doing something that the Los Angeles Lakers could not do, and that show a little bit of pride and show up and win a game that, let's face it, they might not win another one. Maybe they go home and win, but at least they avoided the clean sweep and total embarrassment in their conference finals.
I will remember Game 3.
I think the Lakers showed up. They played at home. They showed up in Game 4. They're just not as good as the Nuggets, but the Celtics, after taking one on the chin, and Magic Johnson is mocking you on Twitter, and everyone's talking about how you quit. You don't have starters in the game late. They came back. They bounced back. They showed a little Celtic pride. So I'll give them some credit for that. But this series is still over sooner rather than later. They will not be the first ever NBA team to erase a 3-0 deficit. Isn't it crazy that's never happened, by the way? Of all the series, no one's ever erased a 3-0 deficit to win 4 straight in the NBA.
Yeah, this is not the Celtics team to do it.
No. This is not the Heat team to allow it either.
But it's
Jimmy Butler won't allow it.
I think it's more about Boston. In L.A., it's more about the Lakers than the Nuggets. They are so inconsistent game in and game out. Anthony Davis, great one night, a flop the next, dormant. And it's unexplainable. I cannot get into why that happens. But when it comes to the Celtics, Chad, this is a team that, they showed pride last night. They didn't have any pride in Game 3. And that told me everything I needed to know about it, because they're down 0-2. That was the sense of urgency when it should have happened. And what we saw, they're going back to Boston. They're going to, they're flying back no matter what happens in Game 4. And now they play one more game. Miami's better. And for the record, Denver is the best team. I'm not saying the Lakers are the Celtics, because they're not this year. The Lakers actually were competitive. This Boston team has not been against Miami for whatever reason. And it starts with the players, not the head coach. Did the players take the credit last night? I'm just curious. Or did their head coach take the credit for the win like he fell on the sword for Game 3? Because he shouldn't have.
No. And I'm partly curious. I'd love to see Grant Williams get a start in this next game and just go at Jimmy Butler from the tip and see what happens. Could he score 70 against them if Grant Williams got nose to nose with
70
him early in the game? I want to see the stupidity of challenging him again and getting in his face, and seeing the dog and Jimmy Butler come out again, but now for a complete game instead of just the end of it.
Chad, we are in the middle of an NFL offseason that is it's a desert for me. Mandatory minicamps matter. That's where the headlines come from your favorite team. Insert team here. It's not about Nashville's market. It's not about what happens in San Francisco or in Phoenix or anywhere. I'm here to tell you that all of the headlines about OTAs, the vast majority of them are either about rookies or about who's not there. This is attendance. This is let's take the roll. Let's find out who is here and who is not. The media, on behalf of NFL coaches who want every player to be there in attendance on voluntary, organized team activities. The media does the bidding of the league, and the headlines are dominated by which veteran or which guy earning a second contract is not in attendance. It's not about the headlines of, oh, Bryce Young looked like this, Will Levis looked like that. That's secondary. And for a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, that is so weak that yesterday the NFL owners can vote through and approve the fact that players have to then abide by the fact that they're going to be flexed on Thursday night starting in Week 13. Could be. We then turn the page, and it's about which veterans are not there for voluntary OTAs. Give me a break on this. No headlines needed. And I'm to blame too, because I've played into this for years and I refuse to do it moving forward. The fact that a veteran decided he didn't want to be there is not a headline. But the media creates a controversy on behalf of the coach because the coach or the GM wants pressure on the player to show up for what? To run drills and push a sled and catch a pass? Show up in September and ball out or don't. That's how we will judge any player. And I promise you, you will not see a headline in September about what happened in May. But we'll click on the headlines in May on behalf of September. I don't understand it. In no other sport does a voluntary workout matter. And the NFL has created some controversy on behalf of buzz. It's just, we go to the bar and talk about it. That's all it's for. Stop giving into this. On behalf of everyone, please stop giving into this. I'm tired of it.
I think I did. Sorry. I think a big part of it, Hutton, is local bloggers, people that own their own website covering a team, people that write for a newspaper or somewhere that cover a team. They're patsies, but they're so desperate for off-season material that whether or not this third-year player or this veteran
Chad,
or this did something,
not about,
they want to write about it.
The material,
I'm with you on
they show up and watch 20 minutes of practice, and then they go back to their computer and talk about who's not there instead of what they saw.
No, it's the NFL's fault for holding them in the first place. I know what you're saying, that it's a story at all. I'm just saying it's so predictable and dumb because
yes,
people are desperate to produce content. If you're covering one team,
the
content's
in front
only,
of them,
that's what they want to. They feel like it's the chicken and the egg. I think it's always this in terms of how media cover stories. They would argue, and we know a bunch of them. We could have someone on that runs a website covering any team. They would argue, this is what my fans and my readers talk about at the bar. I'd be dumb not to talk about it. I would argue if you didn't report on it, ask the coach about it, or talk about it, they wouldn't be talking about it at the bar. So it's a chicken and egg argument every time about media coverage and what's important and what you should be paying attention to and what's stupid. I wholeheartedly agree with you that it's dumb. And I think it's dumb in large part because local media that covers teams will make it a story, and those local stories by media members then can become a national storyline. I think you cut the whole thing off at the pass and just don't talk about it and don't cover it if you're covering that team locally.
But
personally,
as a fan of football, like I'm clicking on the headlines that talk about which players are disgruntled, right?
See, I'm a fan of drama, so I do that.
But that's fair too.
Yeah,
me too. But if you're
it's less about the football, more about
also
who's mad.
I would like to know more about the players that did participate and showed up to push a sled, or catch a pass, or get reamed out by their coaches for whatever reason, than the players who are not there for the 20 minutes that they're allowed to report on. That's my point. And it's all fluff, and it's on behalf of insert team here, because the coach can't complain about the player who's not there unless he's asked the question. You're taking the role. You're taking attendance.
I'm more interested in when organizations want to.
Are you truant or not?
Yeah, it's roll call, but media member takes roll call and other media members at times. It's all, to me, it's so stupid about the lack of access you get. It's mainly about roll calling. Who's there? Who showed up? Who did this? There's nothing really getting done. I do find it interesting when it's the organizations that tout all about football, all about team, all about sacrifice. This is our culture. This is our ethos. And then half the team doesn't show up to voluntary team activities, and I kind of chuckle and laugh at that so I can understand the questions coming about, well, if you're really all about team, shouldn't this guy, and this guy maybe show up to your OTA or your voluntary workouts or to whatever you want to name the stupid different off-season sessions you have for the NFL that really doesn't matter. Here's what matters in the NFL off-season. The draft, let's back up. Combine, draft.
Oh, back up even further. Senior Bowl.
Senior Bowl, Combine, thank you, Hutton, Senior Bowl, Combine, Draft, Schedule announcement. That's it. I just laid it out for you. You know when we're going to start talking about NFL previews for the season? Probably about a month from now, because there can be a 2.5 month wind up into a season. But this time we're in now, spring, early summer, we're done. The schedule's announced. We're done. We're done with big storylines.
Well, unless there's an injury that happens. Aaron Rodgers strained a calf, right? That is a headline.
Injury announcements or huge drama, player wanting to be traded, and or other off-field issues.
That's it.
That's the time of year we're in.
But the headline in New York, and immediately I'm thinking, oh, this is like Buffalo all over again because they don't punt. Josh Allen doesn't allow the offense to go to the sideline on third down and whatever. Matt Araiza, a Buffalo Bill, cut. We know the backstory. He is working out for the New York Jets. When I saw this headline, I'm thinking, another team that doesn't plan on punting, unless Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, which is a headline today because of the calf muscle. So good for Matt Araiza, by the way.
Yeah, I hope he lands a job there.
I think, go to your theory. Should he go to the worst offense in the NFL, or should he play for Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen?
I think ultimately players want to be on the most successful teams possible, right? Like if you're a punter, what's the ultimate glory as a punter? To win a Super Bowl ring as a punter.
Okay.
So my answer to my own conundrum for punters would be, let me sign up for the best team, and the best team usually has the best quarterback and the best offense. But if you're truly concerned about your participation and your level of play and opportunities you're going to get, I have often begged the question, if you're a punter, do you not root for or try to sign with a team that has the worst quarterback? Like if you really are a primetime punter and you're saying, I want opportunity.
If you're the punt god.
If you're Matt Araiza, punt god, then by God, I'm looking at Sam Howell and saying, I want to play with this guy. I mean, name the bad quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Just
half the league.
Rookie quarterbacks. You know, I think C.J. Stroud in Houston is a good opportunity for me to see the field a lot. If I'm a punter.
Arizona.
Right. Kyler Murray, you keep playing video games, my friend, because I'm going to be on the field punting the whole time. Colt McCoy, even better. How Colt McCoy is still in the league is beyond me, but good for him. This is a guy I want to punt with, is Colt McCoy, when he's a starting quarterback. Not many probably ask that question, but I will ask it. If I were a primetime punter, go to the team with the best offense. The worst offense.
Carpenter joins us when we return here on Hot Mic.
So let's see the video that John Morant was dumb enough to have posted. A guy said this: John Morant has more money to go anywhere in the world, and he chooses to go to Instagram Live. Now, John Morant is a fool. We know John Morant is a fool. It was two fools sitting down, Jalen Rose and John Morant, for a ridiculously idiotic fake interview a few months ago, all right? So John Morant does what every NBA player does. He hangs out. There's always a little guy. Usually it's a little white guy. But watch this video. John Morant's going to flash a gun. All right, you're that stupid, fine. But watch the little idiot driving the car as you watch the video that ultimately is going to cost John Morant a ton of money. We can't believe he's any dumber than he is. He's already the dumbest dude walking except for Dwight Howard, and we'll get into that. But watch this video. There they are. Look at this idiot right here. He's looking around like, hey, am I cool? Oh, he's dancing like a little, so John Morant's trying. John Morant looks like a girl. I hate to say it, but he does. Look at it. I mean, he flashes a gun, and then they put the thing down. Now it's been deleted. But, I mean, his little buddies look like, I don't know. They kind of look like the Bengals back in. Look at this little guy. There's always a little punk like that hanging out with a star. There's always a little punk. Shaq had a little white guy. I remember when we were filming Blue Chips. Everybody usually has a little white guy. But I'm telling you, this dude is about as hard as this cup of coffee. There ain't nothing hard. He looks like a girl. Seriously, if I were advising John Morant, you know what I would tell him? Cut your hair and get serious about your craft. Just change everything about you. Seriously. Just change everything about you. You're a great player. You're a great talent. You have a great family, although those people have lost their mind as well, his family. But I'd tell you, get serious about your craft. Put your life into your craft. Forget about the other crap. Cut your hair, change your look, change your thing, change everything about you, or grow your hair longer. I don't care. But what I usually used to tell people, and I know I'm the old guy, but it always works, cut your hair, get serious about your craft. I've told guys in business, cut your hair, get serious about your craft. Now, well, that's racist. Hey, what does hair have to do with it? No, it just means that you're changing up what you are doing. It means you are getting serious about what you should be serious about. Because let's be honest, this guy's career could be over. I don't know. You get playing with a gun, next thing you know, you could end up in jail. Career could be over. So get serious about the one thing that works the most. Did you ever see Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Barkley? Did you ever see him with, like, I don't know, something to distract? You never did. Do you ever see LeBron James with something to distract? No. LeBron James serious about his craft. He's not out there trying to put purple in his hair or put green in his hair or make his hair look like my mother's back in the 1970s where you had the beehive going like Morant. No, you never saw that. Of course you don't. I'm serious, you don't. You know, the girl that comes in the office with purple hair is never the leading seller in the office. It's just, she's just not. The guy that comes in with all of a sudden a face tattoo is not the leading producer in the company. He just never is. People that are serious about their craft get things done. People that know and understand, hey, look, we got to get this done. And if I'm John Morant, you can play kid, you can play tough guy, you can play a little child, you can play try to look like a girl, I don't know. You can have all that feminine energy that John Morant has off the court and your little effeminate friends off the court, but it's a man's league.
Live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton and Withrow with you for Hot Mic across the OutKick network. Hope you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out OutKick.com as well. Coming up, Clay Travis will join us in a little over 30 minutes. Right now, Bobby Carpenter, each and every Wednesday, right here on the show. Bobby, good to see you, man.
Oh, it's a pleasure to see you guys. Just excited to be joining you again.
Time to talk a little college football, the Sirius XM host. So, how many times did you play at night in the Big Ten?
Not many.
You know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah. And I understand. Jacob Hester, he laughs. I mean, he's a Louisiana guy because we try to get as many night games as possible. And I'm not anti-night game by any stretch. Don't get me wrong. I love a good night game, but for me, I don't need 6 to 8 night games a year at home. I'm content if you look at your schedule and maybe you take your 3 to 5 best games that are premier games that are going to be, especially in Ohio State, going to be at one of the epicenters, if not the epicenter of college football that weekend. I think you can make that a night game. I don't need to see BTN throwing Ohio State Rutgers on at night just because you have to have some content. I don't need Toledo on at night. Penn State, great time for a night game. Notre Dame, great time for a night game. We played Texas in 2005, my senior year at night. Fantastic game. Vince Young, terrific competition. 2 top 5 teams. I think we played Washington my sophomore year at home at night, and we played Penn State my senior year on the road at night. And I don't think we played any games my junior year at night. Some of the games later in the year, you get in that mid to late November, and you have a 3:30 kick. I mean, heck, it's dark up here by 4:45. So, I mean, it kind of feels like a night game of sorts.
Right.
But I don't need, the thing is, I'm not against it, but to me, the game needs to warrant it. I don't need to wait all day to see a score that's 42-6 at halftime.
So, but I'm confused based on the headlines of this Big Ten media rights deal with NBC. I don't blame NBC, by the way, because NBC wants Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Those are the three teams you want in prime time.
Well, they at least want the option of picking them.
Oh, the option, yes. The NFL just approved, without players' consent, by the way, Thursday Night Football flex scheduling for late in the year. And they did it on behalf of Amazon, who's paying $1 billion per year. At what point will this just be approved and it's not a headline because the team and the athletic program, the university, is getting $100 million per season per school, and the players just have to deal with it? You know where I'm going with this. At some point, the money matches whatever realm that we're talking about for a headline where, oh, I'd rather be on Big Noon Kickoff. And I would, by the way, I agree with that versus NBC at night. But sorry, money talks. And ultimately, that's what's going to happen.
So there's a lot of tentacles to this, number one. I mean, you guys are getting into a lot of different things here. I'm not against playing at night. I know, here's the thing. I know a lot of the coaches, they like big night games for recruiting. And because you can get everybody in, you have all day. And especially, if they're out-of-state kids, you got to think you're getting on a plane Saturday morning. You need all day to get there. And you want to make sure they're there by 3 or 4 o'clock. So that helps in recruiting. But they don't necessarily love a night game if you have a big game the following week, because that cuts down on your preparation time. People don't realize this. I think coaches are like players, where you win the game, you go out, celebrate with your friends, have a couple beers, and relax. False. They go maybe see their family, hug their wife, maybe catch a little bit of dinner, maybe watch a little college football if you play in the early window. But then they're doing some work. I mean, they're going to get 3 or 4 hours worth of game planning, get a jump start, and maybe you're lucky because you played at noon and you're playing Wisconsin next week and they're playing, at 7 o'clock. And so you can sit there and watch that game kind of as a fan, but you're also doing some game planning with it. So I think it's more the coaches. And then also, listen, guys, it doesn't bother me. I'll go out there in the cold. I've been in those games where playing, it's 20 degrees. I've been watching them in 20 degrees. Some of the fans complain, like, oh, it's cold at night, it's this and that. And I'm like, whatever, man. If you don't want to go, don't go. It's a TV show now is what it is. So you've got to understand that. But there are a lot of influential people who in the Big Ten footprint have been conditioned that Big Ten games are at noon or they're at 3:30. And so the late games in the year, they don't necessarily want to deal with the cold and the weather. So I get part of that. I believe there is an issue with some of the stadiums of winterization. I'm like, put some more heaters in. I don't care. Like, we talk about the environment and this and that, but people are like, I want the night game, then put it on at night. We'll just have a gas furnace blowing into the ether with no containment just to keep things warm. I mean, that's the irony of what we're living at in society now. You pick the facts to fit your argument. So you've got that aspect of it, with everything. Then the other part, I mean, Kevin Warren, I mean, guys, he's like the Jelly of the Month Club. It's the gift that keeps on giving all year long, because he got this great deal done. And man, if the devil's in the details, he's living in this thing, buddy. I mean, he's been there residing in the fine print of this contract for a long time. And I'm wondering, number one, he sold the structure, and Jim Delaney should get some credit, blame for this as well. The way that this structure with BTN is, they own the rights essentially to every Big Ten game across all sports. And Fox ultimately owns it. So that's why Fox is in all these negotiations, because they want to make sure, if you're parceling out other things, that we understand how these rights are going to be doled out. I mean, number one, Kevin Warren, somehow, because there's only a couple options here. He sold the Big Ten championship game, which Fox has the rights to. So either A, the person from Fox wasn't paying attention in the meetings or the emails. Maybe they were drunk, or maybe they sent someone's nephew who just needed a summer internship. Or B, Kevin Warren sidebarred him and sent him a text or an email that wasn't part of everything else and guaranteed him that game. And so there's a whole payback with Fox now that they've got to deal with. I know we're getting in the weeds of all of this. And then also they sold those evening rights to Peacock and to NBC. And think about this, guys. So they bought the primetime rights. Did anybody think that they just bought them for the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season and then it was just going to stop on November 1st? Like, is that real? I mean, I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, well, yeah, of course you're going to play night games in November. NBC bought the nighttime window.
Yes.
Were we supposed to believe that they didn't think that they were getting any of November with that? Like, I mean, the presidents and the ADs, like, they needed to step up, because there's no way a logical person could think that they would spend that type of money for 2/3 of a schedule.
I'm going to issue a warning to the Big Ten right now. And, Bobby, I want your reaction to this, because I think your guy, Jacob Hester, also another Southern boy, would agree with me on this. If the biggest holdup right now is, honestly, we haven't played night games in November because we're worried about fan safety or it being too cold, when you can play January playoff night games at Lambeau Field in the NFL, the Big Ten is at a key point right now because they're making more than the SEC, right? This is an arms race, and it's a 2-conference race. And the SEC is not blowing past the Big Ten in any of that. This is the type of thing that will stop it, because we all know the SEC will say yes to anything involving spotlight, money, wins, any of that. They will then go to these networks and they'll play a game at midnight if it meant they're going to make more money, right, than the Big Ten. I think just from the sports football perspective, this is a pretty old school hardline stance by Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, anyone else, if their argument is we can't play at night in November.
Well, part of the thing that will help alleviate it after this year is you'll have UCLA and USC, which I think they'll predominantly be taking those evening windows when they're at home, because that just makes more sense.
And by the way, maybe Washington, Oregon at some point too, right, Bobby? And
this might help expedite that to give them a greater inventory in that late window, especially if you're out on the West Coast, because you're sure as heck ain't kicking off a game in the Coliseum or the Rose Bowl at 9 a.m. for big noon. Heck, they can't get 10,000 people in the Rose Bowl for a normal game, let alone if it starts at 9 o'clock. So that might expedite that process. I understand a lot of what you're saying. That's why Ohio State, they're playing the November 11th game. Penn State's playing on Black Friday.
Yeah.
You know, they did some make goods here to make sure this thing works out and to get it done. And I do believe that the coaches understand, that element of, publicity is good publicity, and they're going to try to get this thing worked out, because that's the reality. Being on TV in primetime blocks when people are watching, that is the best recruiting that you have, because it brings eyeballs from around the country to your set. It's going to open up NIL opportunities. It's marketing opportunities. It's guys like, hey, that's how Oregon has built a football program. We'll play at night and we'll wear sweet stuff, and everybody's going to watch it and say, oh, that looks cool. We'll go take a look at their facilities. They're awesome, by the way. Let's go here. This sounds like a good idea.
And meanwhile, I'm laughing at, the Pac-12 probably picking up the phone and just blowing up NBC. Is like, we'll play back-to-back night games. We'll play at midnight. We'll play at 8 p.m. If Ohio State, Michigan won't do it, we'll take whatever money you want to give us to play on Peacock. We'll play on Peacock Plus, Peacock 3. Doesn't matter. We'll do all of it. But I'm only half joking, Bobby. When you look at the situation the Pac-12's in right now, how dire is it? And what more should they be doing besides the obvious, which is all holding hands and praying that the Big Ten doesn't take Washington and Oregon from them?
Well, I think that's all they can really do. I mean, I was talking to Ian Fitzsimmons, and he's down in Dallas. Hester and I am on the show. I've known Ian for a while. And I was like, what's the buzz like with SMU potentially joining the Pac-12? And he goes, honestly, I think I would advise against it. He's like, hold out, wait, try to get some momentum going. He goes, the Big 12 will probably slide in. They may want to grab you up so they can grab more of the Metroplex in Dallas. So I think it's a really dire situation. And I don't know if you guys saw the fact that the Pac-12 now is basically offering up like an XFL or USFL model where, hey, we're going to give you in-game coaching, interviews, more press box stuff. They're just trying to sell availability, which people like. People want to see that. Like, that's a big thing. So that is something they're trying like heck, but it almost makes them look like an alternative football league because that's what they've had to do to kind of garner fan interest. So it's a unique paradigm they're in. And then one other thing with regard to night games in the Big Ten. I'm on my phone right now, so I don't necessarily have the date, but I believe it's December 19th, 2024 is a Friday night, and that is the first round, which can be held at home sites. And so whether it's at Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, I'm sure one of those three will have a home game in that first round of 12. And I'm not sure if they get the Friday night draw versus the Saturday draw, but they'll have to figure something else out for that then as well.
Pat Narduzzi's upset with Deion. He's the first of how many coaches over the next calendar year?
Pat, listen, I know my brother played for him. I've known Pat a long time. He's a Youngstown guy. He's an Italian dude. His emotions, to say he wears them on his sleeve, it's like a ketchup stain. I mean, it's right there. You can't escape it. I think here's two things. Two things I believe his point and Deion's point can be true at the same time. Everyone knew Deion was going to come in there and change it up. And you look at this, Deion, I believe, has 57 guys have left and 47 guys have come in. And that's an absurd number when you talk about 85 scholarships. But his president knew about it, or chancellor, the AD, everybody knew what he was going to do, and they signed off on it. And they said it was good. Pat Narduzzi's like, hey, you need to coach the guys that are there. You need to develop them. You need to do some things and help them become better players. And I also believe in that. I believe that there's an element of college athletics where when you go to school as a 17, 18-year-old young man or woman, part of the process there, even with NIL and the portal and all this, and I think the portal kind of inhibits this as much as anything, is learning how to be an adult, learning how to deal with difficult situations, understanding there will be adversity in your life and pushing through it. And that's what collegiate athletics, I think, is also supposed to teach, outside of just the craziness of the NIL and these TV contracts and everything that we're talking about. So I think both of those things can be true. What Pat's saying, he doesn't bring in a lot of transfers. I mean, he's down at the lower end. I think it's 6 to 10 somewhere. You look at Deion, he's like doubled up the next highest coaches. When you start talking, about some of the other programs like I think Louisville, Arizona State, and there's one other school that Hester and I were looking at, but all of those programs all have first-year coaches. So if Deion's doing this again in his second year, I think that there's a problem, and they're probably not going to win. But doing a full turnover when everybody gave you the blessing to do it, I'm not going to sit there and criticize him for it. But I do think the way Pat Narduzzi does it, which is the way that Nick Saban does it, Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, a lot of this, Dabo Swinney, you don't want to build your team on transfers because it's not a sustainable model. But if you have to come in at the beginning and clean house a little bit, as long as you're keeping those kids on scholarship, that made a commitment to you, and you know what, they may not be able to play football there anymore, but if they want to stay and be students and you're paying for tuition, I'm good with that. I just hate to see you throw a guy out because we got a new coach and we need to get better. Someone recruited them there. They made a commitment to you. And so I think you should honor that if they want to stay. They just may not be seeing the field.
Bobby Carpenter with us here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. So Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu said, hey, the transfer portal, I'm glad I didn't have the opportunity to do that because I had to play behind Patrick Peterson. I had to earn my spot. How do you believe in the status of a freshman coming in and doing that, or is a player a player? He's going to ball or he's not, and we end up with the same guy regardless if he transfers or not.
Oh, I don't think so. You go look at, we all want to glorify Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Jameson Wade, all these guys that it's worked out for. I mean, you could just go through the list of all these guys who have transferred who it's not going to work out for. You don't even have a school identity. You don't have a group, an alumni base that you're tied into, a coaching staff and an athletic department that wants to take care of you, a fan base that, honestly, if you go to a big state U, college football, college basketball, they will help you. They'll help get you a job, and maybe it's just selling insurance, but it may be a heck of a lot better than the alternative you had in life. And so what Tyrann Mathieu said is 100% true. even for guys who end up becoming NFL players and elite ones. I'm going to tell you this, my freshman year, I thought about transferring every day. If my dad wouldn't have said, you went there, you're going to stay there through the fall, you're going to stay there through the spring, we'll talk about it after next season if you still want to leave. He goes, it's going to be hard. But my dad also told me when I got there that it would be the hardest thing that I would do in my life. And I still wasn't prepared for it. And I know things have changed, have gotten a little softer, but college athletics is hard. It's not for everybody, especially at big state U football where everybody cares. There's a lot of pressure internally, externally, and that's what helps develop you, as I talked earlier, into becoming a man and becoming a woman, with whatever sport it is. Like the development. My senior year, I thought about transferring again because, I wasn't getting enough attention or this or that. Like, you have all these thoughts in your mind. You're impulsive when you're young. That's why young people get arrested at a greater clip, doing stupid things like peeing on buildings and DUIs and all kinds of drunken disorderlies that you don't see people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s do because you are more mature. Your brain is fully formed and functional. You don't have that when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, and you hate it at the time. It really hurts and it stings, but you romanticize it now as you look back. As Tyrann Mathieu has had a successful career, saying, you know what? I learned a lot from sitting behind Patrick Peterson. I learned a lot when I, got kicked out of school, and all these different things happened, and that's what ultimately made him the man, the player that he is. Success likes to play hide and seek. But here's the thing, guys. It's a lot better at hiding than it is at seeking. It's not trying to find you. You've got to go find it. And if you just have everybody wants it handed to them, and that's not the way sports work, and that's sure as hell in the way life works.
I'm with you, man. The only thing I've ever quit that my dad allowed me to quit was piano lessons in 5th grade. That's it.
I never started because I was afraid of quitting
If I
piano.
didn't like the coach in elementary school or middle school or high school, I had to deal with it because I was playing that sport and I chose to try out for the team and I made the team and I had to deal with the coach.
If I complained about playing time, I had a mom who would tell me, well, maybe you should do better in practice. Maybe you should work harder. And I appreciate that now. I hated it then, Bobby, to your point, but I appreciate it now.
It's coming from two guys who are not on your level as a first-round pick in the NFL.
But I would have played at night. If I were in the Big Ten, I would have gladly signed up to play that. If I was given the opportunity, I would host a night game. I would too,
as long as I could stay in front of the heater.
Unlike your Buckeyes, I would agree to play at night.
I love playing at night. Just don't be putting trash games on. Okay. What you guys are talking about, that's what it's all about, man.
Yes.
Like, that's why I tell my kids, quit blaming the refs, quit blaming the coaches. Let's get to work and let's try to improve. And I did quit piano, but the rule was you had to take it through 6th grade. And why do I do it for my kids? Because they hate it. I said, you know why? Because Grandma and Grandpa made me do it, so now I'm going to do it to you. So you got to learn the same stuff.
Amen.
Bobby
Amen,
Carpenter, great at everything,
man.
but he is no pianist. That's what I'm hearing.
No pianist, and his alma mater hates night games in November. That's what we've learned today.
Bobby, thank you, man. Appreciate you as always.
Thanks, guys.
Great conversation there. BCarp3 is where you can find Bobby on social.
My oldest right now, 8 years old, is taking piano lessons, and it amazes me to watch her in a recital because it's so far out of the realm of what I would ever do. And when you see your own kid do something that you would never even think about doing, I was never offered music lessons as a kid, would never have thought to do it, but when you see your own child doing it and sticking with it, even though it's frustrating, is a really cool experience. Something you wouldn't do.
I wish I could play an instrument, right?
Yeah.
In college.
Everyone would love to snap their fingers.
I'd love to be able to play guitar in college. I'd also like to speak. I would like to be bilingual. I didn't care about any, foreign language. It was a prereq.
You got to start young.
In high school. Are you doing that?
That's the lesson now.
Are you doing that with Evie?
We want to. I mean, she's going to know how to play an instrument.
She's on her 4th language now?
Yeah. Well, up next, she's going to learn Swahili. So that's the next step.
She can go to UNC then.
Well,
she's approved. Coming up, primary complaint. We air our top grievance of the week on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers.
Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you gotta keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
And we're coming to you live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Great chat there with Bobby Carpenter. Coming up in 10 minutes, Clay Travis will join us right here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Chad, every Wednesday at this time.
Every Wednesday.
We air our top grievance of the week.
We don't take a Wednesday off, Hutton.
We do not. And we don't repeat any complaint for primary complaint.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mic's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week, going paperless. If you go paperless, you get a notice in the mail on paper that you went paperless. Should it not be an email? That's my primary complaint.
Oh, look at me. Look at me. We're trying to save the planet. We're going paperless. Here's the paper that we're printing that on. I like that one. My primary complaint is for this gentleman that posted on our YouTube chat a little bit early. Oh, it's actually two of them. Someone named Mads wrote in as our show started.
Maddie.
I'm not subscribed to this channel and don't have notifications turned on. Very creepy. Matt Sheely writes, why, TF, did I get a notification for this? In which Jonathan Kaufman replies,
oh, yeah,
which is a great reply.
Thanks, Sleepy Danny.
I love all of our viewers on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you find us. I love all of our listeners on one of our great radio stations that carries our show. I love all of you. We got a lot of loyal people who watch the show on YouTube who we interact with. I interact with every day. In that YouTube chat, we interact with on the show as well. We love them all. Here's who I don't like. Matt Sheely or any other loser, and you are a loser, by the way. If you get a algorithm that takes you to a video on YouTube, and you click on that video, and you go to it, and you don't think, oh, I don't want to watch this sports show, I don't want to watch this, whatever. But you take the time to type in the chat, why, TF, am I in this chat right now? You have way too much time on your hands. You don't understand the digital space and what's happening to you while you're on YouTube or the internet in general, and you are a loser. You are also my primary complaint for this Wednesday, and we take no Wednesdays off when it comes to primary complaint. Thank you very much.
Hut, real quick on the paperless stuff. I actually prefer just constantly having the paper sent. I view it as I'm just keeping the U.S. Postal Service in business.
Yeah, you're creating jobs.
I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that one.
It's like littering. You're creating jobs.
They continually ask, like, hey, do you want to go paperless? And I'm just like, no, I'm good. Like, I constantly click off of that. Guys, my primary complaint this week is the fact my Spotify account got hacked. And the big problem with that is, what do you gain by hacking a Spotify account? I don't have premium, so it's not like there's a credit card or anything like that associated with it.
It's a great point.
A lot of Hanson if you hack Davey's account.
Oh man, Mbop like 5 times. It's just a playlist. But what I don't understand is, I get the email saying, hey, you changed your email account with Spotify to insert 20 different letters followed by a couple of numbers here. And I'm like, well, no, I didn't do that. I managed to get it fixed. But I did more research, and apparently, like, what some people have done is they'll go in, they'll hack it, and then they'll just start liking a bunch of random songs to prop those up on the charts. And it's just frustrating because, like, I've never heard of any of these songs or anything of that nature, and I seldom even use Spotify at this point, but it's just getting hacked is just a hassle in and of itself, and that is my primary complaint.
That's a good one. W Icon on our YouTube chat says, my primary complaint, and hit these up on here too, we're getting some good ones, just happened at the grocery store. Always assume the customer wants a bag. I had 7 items. Of course I want a bag. Why are you asking me? I'm trying to preserve your job by not using something else. I can juggle 7 items. I can't juggle 7 items. Give me a bag. That's good.
I miss the paper bag, by the way. I hate the plastic bag.
It's very sturdy. A paper bag is very sturdy. As Hanson takes us to break.
Hanson and
Davey's favorite band.
Davey's happy.
Davey is one of the rare people who celebrates their entire catalog.
Actually, Colin just hacked Davey's Spotify is what happened.
We can listen live into Davey's Spotify throughout. It's just going to be an assortment of Hanson songs.
That was my ringtone back in college, man.
Who's your favorite Hanson brother?
Davey Hanson.
Is Chris one?
The fact that you knew any name is amazing.
No, Chris Hanson's the...
I thought he was going to say the skinny one.
Headlines next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Chad is flying by, as usual, on a Wednesday.
Coasting at this point, Hutton.
Jim Williams, the media consultant for college football. He joins us coming up in 20 minutes. Right now, we lead off hour number 2 with Clay Travis, founder and president of OutKick, OutKick.com, and the YouTube channel, if you're watching, we hope you'll subscribe to. Clay, hope you're doing well, man.
Doing well. How are y'all?
Doing great. So Matt Araiza looks like he's going to get a second chance. He's got to work out with the New York Jets, Clay, but that doesn't take away the time missed because of what appears to be a false accusation against him. I guess what's next for Matt Araiza, and how can we ever get to a place where these types of things happen less?
Yeah, what I argued is
I think there are a lot of things that should happen. But in this situation, I think we have to start charging women or men, because it could be a gay relationship, right, who make fake sexual assault allegations, right? And I think the person who is proven to have lied based on the investigation should face charges that are similar in time behind bars that someone that you accuse of rape would face. That's one, right? Two, I actually think we have rape shield laws. And that means that if you accuse someone of rape, your name is not shared publicly. And, you know, the logic behind that is that there is a stigma associated with being a victim of sexual assault. And the rape shield law makes it more likely that people are going to come forward. So let's just focus on the stigma. That seems to be a societal decision that does make sense. There's also a big stigma in being accused of rape. So if we're not going to name the person who is raped, why would we name the rape accuser, the person being accused of rape, right? The alleged felon, before they're actually convicted? I think there's actually an argument to be made that if you're accused of sexual assault, until you're convicted, your name should not be publicly discussed either. And so those would be a couple of things that I think would be significant, because it's hard to unring the bell of the accusation itself. In other words, I bet there's way more people who saw the story of Matt Araiza accused of gang rape than have seen the vindication. And that's the case for a lot of cases. But that would be, you know, two things that to me make sense in this particular situation.
Clay Travis with us here on OutKick. Chad and I were discussing this earlier. If you're a punter, Clay, and you're Matt Araiza, do you go to the worst offense in the NFL or the best?
I go to whoever's offering me the most money, the most guaranteed money. I don't care about.
Well, let's just say all things are equal, but the bonuses are based on your performance. I mean, he went to Buffalo initially, and I thought, well, great. The punt god is going to a team that never punts. Now he's working out for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. Like, would you rather play for the Texans or the Jets?
Again, you're assuming that all the money's the same.
Yes.
I would go to whoever gave me the most guaranteed money if I were a punter. I'd rather be on a team that wins.
Okay.
I mean, I understand that, you know, you may get more opportunities to punt on a bad team, but it's not that much fun to be on a bad team.
No, it's
even
not.
if you're having individual success, it kind of sucks to be on a team that's going 3-14 or, you know, 4 and whatever the math is, 4-13 now every year. So I would rather be on the good team. Yes, you may get less opportunities, but your opportunities matter more in terms of winning a game, which is the ultimate goal. So I would take the most money, one, and most years guaranteed, all that. And then two, I would rather be on a good team than a bad team, even though I might get to punt less.
But so I see the Jets headline, and that's great. But the Bills brought in Araiza. They let him go based on everything that was alleged. Shouldn't the Bills be at the front of the line to bring him back?
Yeah, I would. If I were running the Bills. Now, there's obviously complications associated with salary cap. I don't know what their situation is at punter right now. Did they guarantee money to somebody else? Is that job now filled? You know, all things being equal, if I ran the Bills, then yes, I would be, you know, moving as expeditiously as I could to try to bring him back in what would be in many ways, I think, a public apology as well, by signing him and bringing him back to the team.
So, Clay, you know, the NFL recently decided, because of money, that they're going to flex in and flex out some Thursday night games and move teams and possibly give them 2 Thursday night games, which none of the players or coaches want. They hate it, but they do it because they're getting $1 billion a year from Prime Video. Meanwhile, the Big Ten is being held up by Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, some of their premier programs, saying they don't want to play at night in November when there's night playoff games at Lambeau Field in Green Bay. And this is a big problem with NBC, who recently bought a primetime Big Ten game as part of their package, expecting night big-time games in the Big Ten. Am I crazy to think that this is a ridiculous stance and very old school by the Big Ten to try to hold this up because they don't want to host night games in November?
I think it's probably just a communication issue, right? That the schools somehow did not communicate to the coaches that this was potentially going to be an aspect associated with this deal. And that's a failure. You know, what's the famous phrase? What we have here is a failure to communicate. Ultimately, the money's going to dictate, right? Like, you take money and in exchange, you provide a service. And that service can include playing games when you otherwise might choose not to. I think I saw, if I'm not mistaken, that Penn State and Michigan State are now playing a neutral site game
on Black Friday.
On a Friday.
Yes. On Black Friday.
Yeah, on Black Friday. Yeah, in Detroit's Ford Field. And that's because television, way more people will watch that game. I think it's smart, right, on a Friday than might watch it on another day of the week. And that means that you may have to make a choice that might not be the most ideal as a result of that. And, you know, when you take the money, I think it's hard to argue. Like, this was my Ja Morant argument, right? When you get paid $200 million, the expected behavior that you might be held to is going to be higher than it would be if you didn't take the $200 million, right? And so I think it's hard to complain, and I think most people out there understand, and I suspect that it'll get worked out. I think one of the complexities was, you talk about a failure to communicate, at least in the reporting that I saw, that somehow NBC got a Big Ten title game promised to them, which they didn't actually have to get promised to, which seems like a real big failure,
big
right?
one.
So I think Fox was going to have to get paid like $40 million as a way of compensating them, I think, for the 2026 Big Ten title game. But that is, I don't pretend to know all the details associated with that, but that seems like that was a big miscommunication that was allowed to happen.
Clay Travis with us here on OutKick. Ja Morant, you brought him up briefly there, but the Instagram story that he posts, he ends it by saying bye, but he said something, love you, mom and dad and baby girl, and then he says bye. Police do a welfare check on him. At what point, Clay, does the conversation go from Ja Morant superstar to Ja Morant doesn't want this hype behind everything, and he actually needs real help? Does the conversation with him need to be reframed?
I'm there already.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm there already. I mean, I just talked about this on OutKick the show. So big picture. Let's take it away from Ja Morant. 30% of teenage girls have thought about committing suicide in the last year, according to a recent survey. The CDC just came out and said that social media is a toxic impact on your average young person. I think that Ja Morant is actually a representative sample of young people in America today. And I think social media, in particular, I would say Instagram, I think, I'm not an expert, but I think it is making people who are super young really, really profoundly unhappy. And I use that phrase profoundly unhappy because Adam Silver said that many NBA players are profoundly unhappy in life. And you sit around and you think, okay, if I were in my 20s and if I made tens of millions of dollars a year to play basketball, it seems to me very difficult that I could ever be unhappy. But I think that what is going on to a large extent is, first of all, money doesn't make you happy. Some money does help, right? But the data reflects that if you suddenly went out and won the lottery and you had $100 million, that if you're not happy before, the money is not ultimately going to make you more happy, right? Now, there is a certain level, the data reflects that if you suddenly, if you're making no money and you suddenly have $75,000 a year and you can take care of food and shelter and all those things, it does matter. But money moving forward does not dictate happiness. So I look at this and I say, man, Ja Morant is just actually a representative sample of so many young people in America who are profoundly unhappy. And I think a lot of it is rooted based on the data in social media. I think he's probably sitting around reading the comments that people are making about him. I think he's probably reading a lot of the articles and everything else. And he is, and this is me just, projecting here, everybody thinks that they would turn into LeBron James or Leonardo DiCaprio. right? When you are super famous at 18 or 19 years old, everybody thinks, oh, I would have turned into Leonardo DiCaprio. I'd be the best actor of my generation, or I would turn into LeBron James and be the best basketball player of the generation. What actually happened to River Phoenix and Lindsay Lohan on some level and Heath Ledger is actually, I think, far more common, which is fame becomes destructive. And I feel very fortunate that I grew up in an era, I didn't have a computer at home. Like, I didn't have the internet. And I got all the way to adulthood before I had an email address. And so I feel like my age, and I know you guys are kind of roughly akin to me, like, I wasn't so old that I'm like, I have no idea how the internet happened, how the internet works. But I was old enough that I was a full-grown adult before I ever spent any time on social media. And I think about this a lot as a parent. And to me, Ja Morant is representative of his generation and how toxic social media can be to overall happiness and mental health. And I find it to be just, an illustrative example of how I think he's 23 and I think he's got a $200 million contract. And by the way, he's got a mom and dad and like what appears to be a supportive family around him. And yet I feel like this guy is profoundly unhappy and maybe even contemplating doing physical harm to himself. And I think there's probably a lot more people like him, but I think it goes to the point of, even with all of those incredible things, not to mention obviously the fabulous athletic talents that he has, he doesn't seem to be a happy guy. And I think that probably goes to the people that he's surrounding himself with, the fact that he is in some way not comfortable in his own skin.
Totally agree. And so suicide is the second leading cause of death for anyone 10 to 15 and 20 to 34. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's scary.
It really is. And with that in mind, though, Clay, if you're Adam Silver, if you're any league and you're handing down a suspension, I think we're all looking for, okay, how long is Ja Morant going to be suspended? For me, it's more than that. It's okay, he's suspended, but while he's not with the team or with the league, what is it on the league to make sure this guy gets on the right path? Or is it up to Ja Morant and people around him? Because the people around him helped him get to where he is, and now those people work for him because he's their payday. And I think that gets lost in the headline and the stories of everything that has gone on over the last 12 months or so.
Well, ultimately, everybody's responsible for themselves, right? So Ja Morant is going to be responsible for Ja Morant. His parents aren't responsible for him. The Grizzlies aren't responsible for him. I mean, he's a grown man. He's 23 years old. He's a fully functioning adult. He's responsible for himself. But I think it's a valid question to ask, what is occurring that is making him a more productive version of himself? And this is what I would be asking if I'm the Grizz, does suspending him for 20 games make him a more productive version of himself? Well, you tried that. You suspended him for whatever the number was that he missed at the end of the year, and then 8 games, and then he comes back and he does basically the same thing all over again. Okay, maybe suspension is not the answer. That would be the way that I would look at it. Now, it doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences for actions, but ultimately the goal of the Grizzlies is for Ja Morant to be one of the best basketball players of his generation. That's the investment that they have made in him. On the court, he has the physical ability. What mentally is presenting challenges there? Those would be the kind of questions that I'm asking if I'm a team owner or team executive.
Clay, so ESPN ABC's Mark Jackson leaves Nikola Jokic off his top 5 list of MVP voting at the end of the season. He says honest mistake, oversight, says that he did it by position, and that obviously he's one of the top 5 players in the league. Charles Barkley, before he knew who it was that did this, said that person should lose their voting privilege. Do you buy Mark Jackson's explanation, or do you think that some sort of bias or prejudice was at play, either fully realized or subconsciously by Mark Jackson when he placed that vote?
I wouldn't want the vote. So let me start with that. As a media member, I don't know, and Mark Jackson is a media member, I don't know what you gain by voting in an award like this, right? Because I would be afraid that I would forget someone that matters, right? So if you just ask me off the top of your head, hey, name the 7 or 8 best quarterbacks in the NFL in order 1 to 8, that would be hard for me to do. I think I could do it in order 1 to 8 and not forget somebody. But I would be concerned as I was doing that. Oh my God, did I forget, Josh Allen, right? Or whoever it could be.
Well, luckily that's not how they do the MVP vote. They give you time to prepare it and write it out. Yeah.
But most people are busy and have like a billion things going on in their life. I don't want the added responsibility if I'm Mark Jackson of voting for MVP. Now you can say he should have spent more time, just do a Google search. I can see his argument if it's true. And he just rated the 5 people he thought were the best at every position. And so I presume he had Embiid as the best center, and so he didn't put Jokic down as one of his finalists, like whatever. I'm willing to buy into the argument. But to me, it just goes back to the people who vote for any award in sports. I think, wasn't there a controversy a couple of years ago or maybe even last year with Maria Taylor leaving somebody off that was kind of indefensible? Like maybe she left Anthony Davis. You can Google it and look it up. These stories, when the ballots come out, regularly occur. And it's not just this sport, by the way. I wouldn't want to be responsible if I'm a coach for ranking the top 10 teams in college football, right? Like when you are in some way involved in the sport itself, I wouldn't want, and Mark Jackson obviously is as a color analyst, I wouldn't want the responsibility here. So I'm inclined to believe it was accidental. I don't think there was any malice intended here, but it's probably something that Mark Jackson was, has a billion things going on, and he dashes off his MVP award and he doesn't spend much time thinking about it. And that's the result.
You're right. It was Marie Taylor on Anthony Davis back in 2020 on the All-NBA team, and some writer for the Lakers pointed this out. And I haven't read this story. I didn't even know about this. But
yeah, it was a big controversy.
You got it right.
The idea of leaving AD off was pretty indefensible.
First
based on
or
all
second
the
team, either team. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So she blew it, right? Like she blew it on her ballot. But why, if I'm Maria Taylor or Mark Jackson, do I want the responsibility of, I wouldn't want the responsibility right now of, I watch a ton of college football. I wouldn't want the responsibility necessarily of determining who the All-American should be in college football, because I think there's a decent chance that I could make that mistake. So anyway, I just think unless you're going all in on the time that you're going to spend to analyze this, I think that's something that I would prefer not to have.
Clay, appreciate it, man. Great chat today, and we'll catch up soon.
All right, keep up the good work. See y'all.
Thanks, Clay.
Clay Travis.
I agree with him, by the way. I lean more towards he just made a huge mistake.
I think so too.
I don't think it's
you don't fall on the sword that way.
Yeah,
you go more Kendrick Perkins than you do.
He would fight
Jackson,
it more
right?
if he really had some bias involved in it or prejudice. I just think he made an honestly dumb mistake.
And the difference is, unlike Maria Taylor that I'm reading here, where a writer points this out, Mark Jackson admitted to being the person.
Yeah.
Who left off Jokic.
Raised his hand.
And that's why I believe him, because he brought forward the fact and fell on the sword in the same interview.
Yeah.
That's why it's believable. Coming up, it's unbelievable, Chad, that the Big Ten has this media rights deal that apparently is only like a memorandum of understanding, and there are details that have not yet been decided upon. We hit the expert when we come back. Jim Williams joins us next on Hot Mic.
So Jake Bird is a reliever for one of the worst teams in baseball, the Colorado Rockies, who are just horrible. And apparently this middle reliever who was called up for the call up to the big leagues for the first time this year. So he's toiled and worked his butt off. Decided he was going to pull a little old school, going to date myself, Al Hrabosky, and challenge and act like an idiot on the mound because he got an out. He did that against the Phillies. And in doing so, Bryce Harper took exception and went basically to the Rockies bench and said, let's fight. And I love it. I think it's awesome. I love I don't know. I just love stuff because in baseball, there's a lot of fake tough guys. There's a lot of fake tough guys who talk the game, and then there's the tough guys are actually the guys that don't talk tough for the most part, like Pedro Martinez or Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan never said anything. He just threw 107 and put it in your ribcage if he didn't like you. Pedro would knock you on your ass at the drop of a dime. But I love that. I love guys like that. I love guys that are real and authentic. And Bryce is clearly a leader. And I since the day I met him I think I met him when he was like 12. It seems like his first year in the big leagues. He's always been a guy who's been vocal, but he plays the game and he's good. And the other stuff is the chromey stuff that's the modern day game and what they love and all the things that go with that. But the guy plays as hard as he can. And I think he gives it everything. And I loved it. I thought it was a great thing. I thought it was a good thing for the Phillies who need a little kick in the ass. And then there was Ben, he got ejected. Bird got ejected. Rockies won the game 4-0 to avoid a sweep. But none of that stuff matters. That's kind of the thing that you, I don't know about rally around, but it just cements the guy's position in the clubhouse. Zach Greinke became just the 5th player in Major League history. And please understand the significance of that. There have been, 100 and probably 40 years of organized professional baseball. When somebody does something that only 4 players have ever done, unique is not really the right word. I don't even know what it is. It's excruciatingly rare. But Greinke struck out his 1,000th different career player. So he struck out, only 5 guys have done this. In the list pretty much makes you understand. Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, Greg Maddux, and Nolan Ryan are the only other players ever to strike out 1,000 different hitters. Not 1,000 hitters, 1,000 different hitters.
And the only guy on that list that he's similar to is Maddux.
Right. Well, and if you know anything about Zach, he's been Maddux-like since he got to the big leagues.
Right.
And he talked about, I think, his approach. Fascinating story too, by the way. And as a father of someone who raised a kid with Asperger's, meeting a professional athlete with Asperger's it's exactly what you expect. The guy is laser focused beyond belief. And as a parent of an Aspie, I met him. Well, I don't know if met him's the right word, but I ran into him at an event in Arizona, and he was exactly what you'd expect. But a phenomenal career. I think probably a Hall of Fame career too.
Chad, I'm sure you're like me. I raised an eyebrow when I saw the headline over the weekend about the Big Ten and the media rights deal.
That
right?
It was done but not done.
Yeah,
thing.
ESPN with the story, and it was lengthy but very detailed.
I believe the term was horse trading.
Horse trading.
Going on.
Yes. Hurdles need to be worked out between the Big Ten and everyone. It feels like every network's carrying their games. CBS, Fox, and NBC. Jim Williams joins us, who has negotiated things like this in the past. Emmy award-winning Jim Williams joins us, host of Stream On. You can check that on the podcast. Jim, thank you for the time. Did you raise the same eyebrow like Chad and I did, or is this par for the course? Is there nothing to get overhyped about here?
I think that what we have here is really just, first of all, yeah, it was like when Pete's article came out, it was a little like, okay, what the hell? But it's not uncommon to do a deal and it not, every, I is dotted and T is crossed. Okay, that part of it is not the problem. The problem here, I think, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school, is that I believe that the commissioner at the time, Kevin Warren, probably felt that he had the authority to do some things which clearly he didn't have the authority to do. And, that's not me throwing shade at Kevin Warren. That's simply, him assuming things which clearly ended up being wrong. One being his ability to give away a championship game, not necessarily his permission to do. Also, not checking with Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and some of the big brand names about their thoughts of playing, late November football, which I can attest, as I used to direct a Big Ten football. It can be a bit difficult during those months. So these are not problems that I think that cannot be overcome. However, it's going to cost the Big Ten money.
Jim, I'm curious. So Kevin Warren signs off on this, not having the authority to do so. Did the network did the networks know he didn't, or did they assume he did? Because I'm watching the Kentucky Derby, and I'm watching NBC run a promo for Big Ten Saturday Night, and it looked great. And I'm not thinking that I thought the deal was done a year ago.
Yeah, remember, Kevin can't sign, or he couldn't sign anything that the presidents didn't sign off on. Okay.
Yes.
So the grant, that's the whole holy grail of grant of rights, right? You can't do a deal as a commissioner and not have the grant of rights signed. Okay. So in essence, what happened was presidents did this. So there's complicity here from Kevin Warren down the line. It's not just Kevin Warren's fault. It's people not paying attention to detail. And, that is probably where the rubber hits the road here on this, is that not everybody who was supposed to, keep their eye on the ball kept their eye on the ball. And when you start, these contracts, there's like a 2 or 3 page sheet, okay? And that's where we say, this is what you get. This is what, you're going to give us X amount of dollars for this, okay? Now you've got 3, and you said that in the open just a minute ago. You got CBS, you got Fox, and you got NBC. So you got Fox has got the early window. You've got CBS at the 3:30 window, and you've got primetime goes to NBC. Who gets the primetime game? Meaning, who gets the prime game on that day? And that's negotiated out as well. So there's a lot of things here. I think that the CBS and the Fox aspect of it is buttoned down, but the NBC, when they talk about horse trading, what that simply means is, did NBC, for the money that they put up, get what they thought they were getting? And clearly, I don't think they did. Otherwise, it wouldn't be horse trading.
We can't get inside people's minds and know their intentions and motivations and all that. But to me, outside looking in, it is peculiar that Kevin Warren clearly knew he was about to move on to another opportunity. And this was kind of his legacy play with the Big Ten, was this monumental media rights deal that he signed over. So one could then assume maybe there were some corners cut and some promises made or some things that where he couldn't deliver on that was put out there in order to get this thing done before he left so he could have the legacy and leave his legacy with the Big Ten. If you're Tony Petitti now coming in trying to tie this thing back up together and you're kind of the new sheriff in town in a deal like this, Jim, how tough is that to be in that spot where naturally you're going to appear to be not as amenable and kind of the bad guy to these networks because you're the heavy that has to come in and say, everything the previous commissioner promised you, he couldn't promise you all those things. Here's what we can actually do. Well, they're lucky, okay, because Tony Petitti is one of the best. He's a former CBS guy. He's the guy who created the March Madness aspect of the Turner deal, where CBS and Turner do the games together. So in that regard, he's a TV guy, so he understands what is important to NBC. He is probably one of the perfect guys to sort this out. He started the MLB network. He has had he's been working for baseball basically as their lawyer. He wrote, from that standpoint, so he understands how to do deals both in television and also from the college ranks. So they couldn't have a better person in there. And so I do think, what does this mean? Well, what this means, you guys know the SEC situation, you know what they're getting from ESPN. Probably what this means at the end of the day is that deal, which, was, people were touting it as high as $100 million, is probably going to be closer to the SEC deal. And maybe, $65–70 million and not that $100 million that everybody was running around and high-fiving each other for. So is it a monumental mistake? Not necessarily, but it's an embarrassment to the conference. And it certainly is not something that I believe they wanted to see from an optics standpoint. And again, they still have some things to do. They have to talk Ohio State. They have to talk Michigan. They have to talk Penn State. They have to talk these people into playing games, in prime time. And I think, they'll be able to figure it out. But it's a messy situation and one that, they probably could have avoided. But, they're in it now. They're in the soup. And, getting out of it's going to cost them.
Jim Williams with us here on OutKick. He is the host of Stream On. Is there any update on the Pac-12? And based on the last time you joined us, we were discussing the media rights deal and the negotiations there. Is there anything on the horizon for them, or is anything we see simply just coloring between the lines on what we know is inevitable, which is they're not going to reach their goal?
Here's the deal, okay? I think that it's kind of like as Oregon and Washington go, so goes the conference. If they can hold Oregon and Washington there, then there isn't any reason for Arizona, Colorado, and these other guys to jump. I believe that a TV deal worth $25 million, with 50% of it being on linear television, is the deal. Now, I know that they can get that money from Apple. Apple TV will front that money in a heartbeat. And some people will say, well, they're overpaying. Well, not necessarily.
25 per school, 25 million per school from Apple.
I'm sorry. I should have been clear on that. My mistake.
No, it's all good. But that's what is from Apple.
Not that I don't know that, but I assume that they would pay that much.
Okay.
And here's the theory of the case on that. The theory of the case on why is that, think of it, guys, as me doing a proof of concept. Okay. I want to prove to other conferences, other leagues, other people that I can do, this heavy lift of doing 800 events, because people get hung up on the football. It's football, but it's 800 events over the course of an entire year that range from everything from football to field hockey. Okay. So there's a ton that goes with it. That's why they call it tonnage of program. So at this point, I think that 25 million and 50% linear would keep the conference together. Now, if they can get to that, if they can get north of it, that's fantastic. If they get south of it, I don't know whether that's going to be enough. Right now, Oregon and Washington may want to join the Big Ten. Guess what? They're not getting an invite yet. And I guarantee you, from the people I've spoken to, that invite's not going to come at least for a couple of years, because they want to see how the experiment, if you will, with USC and UCLA go. So, you can want something. I mean, you and I may want a Ferrari. That doesn't mean we're going to get it. And, I wanted an invite to the Big Ten. We don't know if they're going to get it. And there's been some conversation that maybe, just maybe, they're going to wait, meaning the Big Ten may just wait out the 5 or 6 years of their contract to see what happens with the ACC. Because you guys there on the, in the SEC in Nashville, the ACC's around the corner there.
Right.
And they got problems. So there might be some teams that they are interested in bringing in from that conference. So, there's one of the benefits of being an SEC or a Big Ten, right, is you've got the luxury of time.
Chad,
and the luxury of time.
Chad, last year, the Pac-12 per university, $37 million on their media rights deal. And that's what they're trying. They're hoping for 31.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and look, when you see a story like at Washington State, where they've got the hiring freeze on and all this going on, I can't help but to look at that, Jim, and think this is just gross mismanagement by Washington State that they're trying to cover with, well, we're now suffering because the Pac-12 is bad and not us. Well, not every other Pac-12 program is doing this the way Washington State is. What's your initial reaction when you see a story like that?
Well, look, there's only about 25 schools in the country that make money off of college sports. Okay. And to be fair, college sports is not set up to make money. It's a nonprofit situation. The key is not how much money do you not want to lose. Mismanagement at Washington State, you could go down a list of a ton of people in that conference and other conferences where they've mismanaged their money. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, I guess would be the best way of putting it, that happens, because frankly, everybody's in an arms race, right? I've got to have a $70 million fitness center for the football team. I've got to have, the stadium has to be expanded. I've got to have this, that, and the other. Well, at times somebody's going to have to pay that bill. And, that's the problem that Washington State has. And as I said before, it's not an uncommon problem.
Shifting into pro sports, just for one question here. When you look at the demise of the regional sports network, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL affected with this,
right?
Do you see one area that they need to focus? For instance, Major League Baseball should take their broadcast inside, and Major League Baseball should produce it and find a way to do it. Is it a one-size-fits-all thing or problem, Jim? Or do you see it as market to market, there's going to be different solutions as to the next carrier for all of these games?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a market to market situation. You might find, we'll take Houston for an example. You could see the Rockets and the Astros go together on potentially developing their own, direct-to-consumer, partnership. Major League Baseball wants those rights back, because what they could do with that is kind of like what the MLS does, and that is they can offer a direct-to-consumer product which gives you your home games. Right now you can get extra innings, but it doesn't give you your home games. So they could, offer that. So I think it is going to be that. And I think we're going to actually go back to some of the good old days where you're going to see some of these games on broadcast television in your local market. So yeah, I think it's going to be a one size doesn't fit all in the baseball, because what we have here is a lot of content. Baseball's got 162 games. And so you've got, maybe you have 35 or 40 on local broadcast TV, and the rest of it will be on a direct-to-consumer situation where you buy it yourself. And, I think that's where we're headed, probably not just in Major League Baseball, but likely the same in, in basketball and hockey and like.
Jim Williams has been our guest. He's the host of Stream On, Emmy Award-winning host of Stream On, plus media consultant extraordinaire. Jim, thank you for the perspective. Appreciate the visit, and we'll do it again soon.
It's always a pleasure joining you guys. Have fun and say hello to all my friends in Nashville. It's a great city.
Will do, Jim. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. There's Jim Williams. Chad, what do you make of the $25 million Apple thing? He's saying Apple would pay it, meaning he knows that's the offer, right?
Weirdly, I think do all the Stanford grads that run Silicon Valley and Apple feel like they owe it to the Pac-12 to keep them afloat? Because as of right now, I don't see that as of any value to Apple. And also, Apple is currently getting fleeced on their MLS deal. They are doing everything but trying to form their own free TV station to put that stuff out on, because no one is watching MLS on Apple TV, based on all reports.
Just based on this conversation, the Pac-12's dead.
Yeah,
it's hard to believe.
It seems like charity to me for Apple to do that for the Pac-12, if it's that much per school.
But that's not enough.
Now,
I think he's saying they're the Pac-12, but it's not going to be. I mean, they got $37 million in payouts from 2022.
I think what he's
per
believe,
university.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's saying half linear TV, half Apple.
50-50.
Which would lead to $25 million per school. He thinks they could get to that with both, which maybe that's doable, but I don't even know. I mean, Apple is a business too.
No doubt.
They're just not handing out money like a charity.
And we're not saying it's Conference USA. Conference USA is paying less than every university gets less than $1 million. So it's vastly different. But in the grand scheme of big business college football, the Pac-12 is not relevant.
It's like watching
based on this.
It's like watching a market. When I think about the Pac-12, there is a lot of value there in the schools that are left. The problem is the uncertainty. And when there's shakiness afoot and people don't think that your market is sound, then no one's going to want to pay for it. And that's where it's a lack of confidence in the continuity of the Pac-12 moving forward. That's their biggest obstacle.
I also don't know what's real and what's not, because the Big Ten is propping up $100 million, right, per school. But apparently that's not the case either, based on the media rights. I don't know what that number actually is versus what is being touted. It's like a contract in the NFL.
Yeah, we got a lot of good info there from Jim Williams, but also almost feel like Matthew McConaughey in Wolf of Wall Street describing the markets right now. With all this money,
bang your chest?
Yeah, but he's just like, it's just air. It's all he's making up words. What is it? It's nothing.
He whistles.
You're selling them on an idea that doesn't even exist. The money's not even real. We just move things around here and there. That's what all these media rights deals kind of feel like right now.
What's going on behind the scenes at USC with Mike Bone, their AD, who resigned right at the perfect time? The perfect time is Friday at rush hour. And that's when they announced that their AD was stepping down. What's up with that? We discuss it next on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
And people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick Network. Chad, Mike Bohn resigned as the AD at USC. It was right at closing time on Friday. News dump time last Friday. Dockich asked me about this on Monday, and I said, look, based on how it was all relayed, there's something behind the scenes going on with this. It's not health related. They would have said something. He would have released a statement.
He said his statement on it mentioned health, but it did not allude specifically to a singular. He just said something like, "This is the right time with my health, my family, to get out of the game." In his
you know where I'm coming
statement.
from. That you clarify that if you're the university or anyone involved in this. It's peculiar.
It's peculiar, but I don't know. I can't rush to too much judgment only because, look, if it's just I'm stepping away and here's the reason why I'm retiring, or there's a legitimate health reason why, I would think you hold a press conference and you do it up on a Monday morning and you talk about, celebrate all the things he did, got him into the Big Ten, did all these things, made the Lincoln Riley hire, and you make a big deal out of it. When you step aside and sort of vaguely allude to health, then it's an odd statement.
Bronny James is about to arrive on campus. And you mentioned Lincoln Riley. And, oh, by the way, the National Labor Relations Board filed a complaint for unfair labor practices against the NCAA, the Pac-12, and then one specific school, Southern Cal. I can't help but think it's related in some way.
Yeah, there's
something else
there's
there.
a reason for sure.
And there's a story there. I don't know what the details would end up being, but there's more to it than just, hey, I'm stepping down as the athletic director at USC, based on where they are right now.
And
status-wise,
if it was just hey, I'm want to retire, you don't do a Friday afternoon news dump on it.
No. And if you want to retire due to health, I mean, and again, it might be, I'm skeptical. If it is, you do it earlier than when it's going down right now. You're absolutely right. You do it before Friday at 5 p.m.
Yeah, he cited health concerns. Here it is. In moving on, it is important now that I focus on being present with my treasured family, addressing ongoing health challenges, and reflecting on how I can be impactful in the future. This is what Bone wrote as part of his statement. That's the one that got me, and I'm thinking, health challenges. Could be any number of things. I dare not speculate.
I know.
But when I hear things like that, the mind goes 1,000 different places as to what he could be dealing with. So
but
it's the Friday afternoon news dump part of it going into the weekend that makes it the most peculiar.
But when this has happened in the past, and this is why I bring it up, you have some reporter who receives information on the discretion of anonymity, right? By the way, Mike Bohn is doing blah, blah, blah. Like, there's some clarification to it, but you don't know where it came from, but we all know where it came from. The fact that there's been no follow-up on this tells me there's a deeper dive that's needed based on the announcement. It feels like he resigned instead of getting fired. It's weird, especially based on when they dumped it.
Like he was given the option, and he said, I'll resign.
Bronny James announced he's going to USC, and their AD then resigns.
Yeah, he says.
It's weird.
I have been dealing with chronic headaches, so I'll cite health challenges and resign.
So the ACC, several schools want more money in their payouts, right, per year. They may be getting exactly what they want. That's next. Headlines on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, It ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Chad, look at the time. Final hour is here on this Wednesday edition. Hit us up. You can join us in the chat on YouTube as well. Just search out OutKick. You can check out any show on demand or live. Everything's streaming on our channel there. Hope you'll subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. And Chad's chatting.
Join us. Chat's on fire. It's been good the last few days, except for people that get drug in by an algorithm and then ask why they're here. And I'm like, consult your local algorithm. That's why.
Ja Morant is back in the headlines. That's coming up in a couple of minutes. Story right now at OutKick.com with Trey Wallace, and he's got great details on the ACC agreeing to a new revenue distribution model. And it's to appease Clemson and Miami and Florida State and others, where now that the conference has admitted they have a problem, the schools who succeed in the postseason, they could receive up to $10 million in additional revenue. It's going to help the top tier. There's no doubt. But, Chad, at best, if I just add the $10 million based on what I believe each school could possibly receive annually with the current grant of rights, it's roughly $50 million compared to the SEC and the Big Ten. Does that actually keep Clemson and Florida State and Miami and North Carolina and insert school that matters? Does that keep them with the ACC? Does it really matter that they've agreed to an additional $10 million revenue chunk?
Well, I'm just now reading through this story. Trey Wallace just posted this a little while ago. So I'm trying to dissect what this new distribution model actually means. And what surprises me about it is those 7 schools, they're up in arms because their brand is actually valuable. So they're talking about a market here. And if we went to market, we would be attractive to any other conference out there that right now is making up to $30-40 million more per year than we are. So give us something more to stay. We like this conference. We want to stay, but you got to give us more because our brand is more valuable. What this new model does is, okay, go prove it on the field or on the court. And if you get to a New Year's Six bowl game like Clemson did this past year, getting to the Orange Bowl, then you're going to get a bigger clip of that money, and it's not going to go back to equal revenue distribution. Clemson then will get the lion's share of that money. If you make the NCAA tournament, you're going to get more money. But I also look up and down at this, and I think just at the top, Clemson, Florida State, Miami. Okay, Miami's the only one getting NCAA tournament men's money this year. Clemson and Florida State aren't regularly making the tournament. They make it occasionally. Florida State makes it more than Clemson here recently, but there's no given that these programs are going to make a lot more money. You know who's going to make money every year with this model? Duke, who's not one of the 7. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament every year. And if it's going to be by athletic excellence, making a Sweet 16 counts more. Making the Elite Eight, making a Final Four. The longer you're in the tournament, that is a big revenue driver, then you're going to make more money. Making a College World Series, I would think, would add to your pot with revenue distribution also.
I agree.
This is weird to me in that they're trying to find a way to tell everyone, you all have this opportunity to make this money, even though it's these 7 that are the loudest about it that want more money, but we're going to appease the lower rung programs and brands by telling you if you do all these things these teams do, if you're Wake Forest and you get to a New Year's Six game, you can make the bonus also.
Let's talk Duke for a moment because you're right. They're not one of the 7. The 7 that are included in this, according to and the stories at OutKick, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, UNC, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. The fact, if we're watching college hoops from January until March on ESPN, odds are we're watching Duke. How is Duke not a part of this? How is NC State on this list and Duke's not, if you're the ACC? This is the hurdle that now becomes the talking point. Because in the ACC, basketball does matter. So much so that Greg Sankey, who could run the NCAA blindfolded, wanted the entire conference to put more effort into basketball and demanded it at a spring meeting, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. And guess what? The SEC is tons better at basketball. When they were only getting 3 teams in, now they get 7 or 8. The fact that Duke is not on this list, and no, I don't think about Duke football, but the brand itself, they don't qualify for the extra $10 million. You see where I'm coming from on this?
No, but according to this, they kind of do because they're going to put the NCAA tournament in also.
But it's about these schools: Clemson, Florida State, Miami, UNC, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia. Like it's going to be referenced as the 7 programs. For what? I don't understand it.
Well, so example, NC State, one of these, the quiet 7, right, in the ACC.
Yep.
If they present this model to me, I'm thinking, well, what New Year's Six games have we been playing in?
Thank you.
We're not getting any money. This isn't about winning on the field. This is about alumni base. It's about eyeballs. It's about money. It's about where we're going to be of value. It's
Brand.
about market size. It's about where we're located. It's geography. It's all of these factors that all these other programs that we are silently against in our conference, they can't just create on their own out of nowhere, out of thin air. So this is a meritocracy is that we're talking about here. That's great. That means all the ACC schools are eligible for this bonus in pay if they do some things athletically and win on the field or the court and advance in their sports. But how this, we don't have the full details because they don't have it yet, but how an awards-based system based on performance on the field truly helps the main issue, which is there are 7 programs saying we can bolt at a moment's notice if you don't give us more money. It doesn't. And if I'm these 7, I'm telling the ACC, no, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to give me more money because I'm North Carolina. I don't have to make an NCAA tournament for the next 5 years. I don't have to make a bowl game for the next 5 years. Give me more because the SEC wants us.
So
that's what they're trying to do.
Going to their spring meeting, though.
This is very odd to me.
Florida State, Miami, and Clemson. After those 3, who do you think of in the ACC? I think of Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah, you think
how is Duke not on this list?
If you say ACC, Hutton, honestly, I immediately think 2 schools.
And North Carolina.
Duke, Carolina.
Yes.
Just word association,
now,
ACC, go.
Football
what percentage of America would say Duke, Carolina?
What NC State, Virginia Tech. When I think of Virginia Tech, I think of Michael Vick. I mean, it's been that long.
I think of ugly colors immediately.
Virginia's on this list. Virginia doesn't come to mind, period.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson is set to make a lot of money because
they're a recent national champion. And I don't think
Clemson is either in a playoff or a New Year's Six game almost every year.
Every year.
So I look at them and circle and say, yeah, under Dabo Swinney, Clemson is saying we're going to roll in some more money because that's going to generate a lot of money for our school. That's great for Clemson. Florida State regularly making a playoff or a New Year's Six game? No. Any of these other schools? No.
I want a 30 for 30 on how Duke was not included in this. There's a story that if Coach K was there, they're included. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you're just going by brands, you think of Duke and Carolina. Chad, you're absolutely right.
So,
but you're going by the sport. In football, I agree. It's Clemson, Florida State, Miami. But after that, if you're just drafting programs, I'm drafting Duke and Carolina before anyone else on this list.
Well, so what's hilarious about all this? So this is...
They got this done in a month and a half.
So Duke President Vince Price is the chair of the board of directors for the ACC.
All right.
Here's his quote. Get ready for this. The ACC board of directors continues to be committed to exploring all potential opportunities that will result in additional revenues and resources for the conference. Today's decision provides a path to reward athletic success while also distributing additional revenue to the full membership. This is from Trey Wallace's piece at OutKick.com right now. There is a chance, now this is just part of the story, there's a chance that schools who succeed in the postseason by making the playoffs could receive up to $10 million in additional revenue. This would certainly help some teams in the conference who feel as if they've been shorted over the last few years, while other schools make money off their success. Well, what happens when all of a sudden Clemson hits a rough patch and can't make a playoff or a New Year's Six game, and some of the other schools that aren't in the 7 start winning and make a 12-team playoff?
All of a sudden,
or make an NCAA tournament run out of nowhere. And all of the schools that are currently bitching about revenue are left out while the other schools are making money in the conference. While Pittsburgh and Louisville start to go on runs and get really good and start making the money. Syracuse, what happens when all of this goes down? This makes no sense based on what those 7 schools are saying.
So in theory, I believe that the conferences consult the networks, right? This tells me they didn't consult ESPN. ESPN owns the rights for the ACC through 2036. And you better believe that Duke is going to be a part of any press release. And they're not mentioned.
Well, other than their president being the chair of the board of directors.
But you understand what I'm saying? Like they're in the 7 programs that are going to be listed.
Yeah,
Duke is not listed.
But
and
here's
ESPN would have them first, based on eyeballs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but it's also Duke that's not raising the fuss over it. But when I read this whole new plan, I think Duke is one of the ones who raised their hand and said, "That's great, you guys want more money. Let's do it where everyone's got a chance of the money because we want to be included in that also." Because now it's just not those 7. But it's also, if you're one of the 7, this is not a solution at all.
But how can you?
I'm saying no deal if I'm one of the 7.
But you understand what I'm saying. I don't understand how Virginia Tech or NC State can raise their hand and complain about it. But Duke didn't? About the revenue not being fair? The quiet 7?
So
I thought it was 3.
But there's all this debate about.
I don't disagree with the 3.
Well, here's the other part of this. So just fundamentally, when you sign a contract, there's a thing of, are you getting paid for your past performance
or your
future performance?
Right.
Is your contract that you sign a reward for work already done, whether it be in sports or whatever your profession is,
right,
or what we think you're going to produce in the future?
Are you Anthony Richardson or are you, insert veteran
What
here?
are the quiet 7 arguing? We have kept this conference afloat for far too long. We are the ones driving the revenue.
No, they haven't.
Now give it to us, and then we'll do that. I agree with you. Duke should be a part of this before Virginia Tech, and all them. But I'm saying, I'm just giving you their argument.
I know.
We're the ones that are valuable.
Carolina is on this, and they should be.
Every single school has a rating and a meter where they can see how many eyeballs watch their football games, their basketball games, everything else. They have collectively said we're the ones, to varying degrees of success, that are bringing in eyeballs that help the brand, that make the money. And the ACC's response to that is, hey, great, we appreciate your hard work. Good job. We're now going to open this up to everyone.
Let's make
and
it fair.
Everything, Clemson, all that you've done in the past by winning national titles in football and making playoffs and going to a New Year's Six game every year, none of that matters. You don't get money moving forward for that.
Yeah.
You just got to keep doing it now from here into eternity, and then we'll pay you more. That's not what these 7 schools are arguing for. So I don't know how this really appeases anyone. I guess it's great if you're one of those bottom schools that didn't complain about being in the ACC and about the money, and you get to say, well,
but if you did,
that's great. If we win, we'll make more money.
But either way, you're caught in this 2036 right of the grants rights with ESPN. And I mean, where is NC State on the list of ESPN importance for any program?
Or Virginia Tech.
Carolina and Duke are high on that list. If you're just talking football.
I think Carolina and football even is desirable. I don't think Duke is.
Well,
basketball-wise they are, but
so if ESPN had the tournament, it would mean more for Duke and Carolina.
Well, but
CBS has the
ESPN
tournament.
also carries how many Duke basketball games over the course of the year?
I know, but they don't own the tournament. They own the ACC football.
It's a weird deal.
And the regular season basketball.
It's a weird thing because it's not these 7 schools aren't arguing we're the best in everything. We always win in everything. They're arguing we think most like the SEC.
But Duke doesn't
because
have to
we
argue.
want to be the best and we want to make the most money, and these other schools don't really want to be the best. They just want to exist. We want to do more than exist. That's what these 7 schools are arguing.
I don't know how they get involved in the
standard bearer of excellence in the conference may very well be Duke basketball, and they're not one of the ones arguing for more money.
I know Virginia won a title. They also lost to a 16 seed. But how does NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech raise their hand and act like they're relevant, and Duke doesn't?
I mean,
Carolina did, and Duke didn't.
If we want to just look at relevance in the top
The
2
Quiet
sports.
7. It sounds like a Tarantino film.
Yeah, the Hateful Eight, followed by the Quiet 7 preceded the Hateful Eight. It was a lesser known sequel, but it wasn't quite as bloody as the Hateful Eight. This is more of a non-violent coup that's taking place.
But
let's our word
does not
association
move
again.
the needle for me.
ACC football. What do you think? Right now, I think Clemson, Florida State, Miami.
Yes. And I agree with why
and if you just say ACC in general, though, I think basketball conference, and I immediately think North Carolina and Duke.
Yes.
So
those 5.
I'm not thinking Virginia Tech, NC State.
No.
They're not at the top of the list of anything.
No. Virginia Tech would be very, like, I would pursue them if I'm building a conference based on market and, you know, the small market versus what you can reach where they're located. But I'm not thinking about them for any specific program, regardless of sport. And they're mentioned, and Duke's not. It's bizarre. Davey Hudson's a huge Duke fan. You agree or disagree?
I've been sitting back here listening to what you guys have been saying and just trying to process everything. And the big takeaway I have is I think that they needed 8 schools to break that grant of rights. And if I'm Duke in this situation, it's like what you said. Whenever I think ACC, I'm thinking Duke. So if you're Duke here and you don't go with them, you got everybody else in your corner. And also, why would Duke want to leave the ACC? I don't really see another place that would be good for them to go just because of how much of a key football is. And we know it is a basketball school.
So, but even so,
I also think that Duke,
money drives everything. And
yes, but I will also say this. There are schools that actually care about the school. And Duke's one of those schools. Like, Duke is one that would actually tout themselves as different than the SEC
but
or
you can
different
do both.
than other schools. No, these schools, UNC is a school that's saying they can do both. Let's also keep in mind that UNC had fake classes for basketball players for years and years.
But you can do both.
So they operate like an SEC program in some ways.
But you can do both.
Sorry, SEC.
Like Vanderbilt has touted their academic excellence, and they don't do both. Duke does it. And I don't David Cutcliffe was there, and he's doing things that we haven't seen at Duke. Point being, it's not all about football in regards to the importance of the brand. And when I hear the group of NC State, Virginia Tech are listed. They're going to be talked about. And Duke is not a part of this group?
I think, though, that there's a difference between, Vanderbilt, you brought up Vandy as an example. There's a difference between we're high-minded academically, where it's very important to us, small private school.
Yes.
We'll gladly take the money and be in this conference. Vanderbilt is of the principles that, we're academics first, yada, yada, yada. But also, we're never going to leave the SEC, even if we're bad in everything or most things, because we want that check. Duke, on the other hand, I think their whole platform is academics first, great school, integrity, all of that. We care about winning. We care about sports. But we're not going to be one of these money or nothing, upward mobility, move out of this conference. We're going to threaten to leave because we're not the SEC and the Big Ten type school also. To Davey's point, I think they're perfectly happy to stay put, and they're showing the ACC that.
They can stay put, but the importance of the brand is way above. Like, I'm just thinking to myself, if I'm with Duke, I'm wearing the Duke T-shirt right now, and we're in a meeting a month and a half ago, or 3 weeks ago, at the ACC meetings, and I see NC State, Virginia Tech speak up, I'm telling them to sit down.
Yeah, come down here with me.
You understand?
In fact, I'll go up there and you come sit here.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
That's my only thing.
Well, there's certain programs that when they speak, you just have to shut up and listen. If you're in these conferences. If you're in the Big Ten, it's Ohio State and Michigan.
Yes.
Up at the podium. Okay.
This
history,
it's
winning,
like Missouri
money,
stepping
brand.
up in an SEC meeting and saying something. Right. Pipe down. Because that's what, and by the way, they won't say anything. But Virginia Tech and NC State does?
But even that aside, Duke should be a part of it. It's amazing to me that what these 7 schools want is not what they're getting at all in this plan. Not at all.
Well, in football, they will. On a playoff, an expanded
Clemson
playoff.
will.
Well, but an expanded playoff. What is postseason? You're right. We don't know the details. Postseason
now,
success.
Florida State, Miami could say, we'll be in a New Year's Six game. We may not, we'll make good bowl games, so we'll make money off that. Sure.
But
I buy that.
Can you not be South Carolina, though, and run your way through and get into a like LSU played for the SEC title? They would not have been in the playoff.
The problem with what they're arguing is if a South Carolina goes on a nice run in a season and wins that money, that is self-defeating what they're arguing, which is we have been the brand holders and keepers for years. We deserve to be rewarded for that.
So there's really no difference. It's just a bonus. It's like a fight night bonus.
Yeah. Anyone can win it.
Dana White's handing these up. Jim Phillips is Dana White at the podium after pay-per-view.
Lowly Georgia Tech could go on a nice run next year and win more money than North Carolina or Florida State.
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest is going to take all of Clemson's money.
Tim Duncan's son.
I mean, but isn't that sort of comical that we have the Silent Seven stepping up doing this, and then all the other programs start winning their money?
But so by 2036, what does the NCAA tournament look like? How many teams are in the NCAA tournament in 2036? How many $10 million bonuses are being handed out?
Probably 96.
In the ACC.
But it's not going to be $10 million just for making – it's up to $10 million based on – I think to make the $10 million based on this, you'd have to be Clemson and make a national championship game and go to the Sweet 16 and go to a College World Series. Then you make $10 million.
But it's easier to make the $10 million in football.
You're not making
right?
$10 million extra by making the tournament.
It's easier to make the $10 million in football.
I would think so. That would be the case.
But Virginia and NC State raised their hand.
That's my point.
I don't get it.
Virginia and NC, there's nothing about winning when NC State, Virginia, and even Virginia Tech raise their hands. It's about we are desirable. We are the hot girl at the bar, and we have people hitting on us. And these other, cronies of yours, they don't.
They're not the hot girl.
No one's hitting on Pittsburgh. No one's hitting on Louisville right now. They're hitting on us. They're hitting on us. I don't know if they are or not, but that's their argument. That's what they're trying to say.
It's not the hot girl at the bar. The hot girl at the bar is going home with Florida State, Clemson, or Miami. And
Coral Gables is
Virginia,
beautiful,
Virginia Tech, and NC State, someone's taking one for the team. I mean, that's what it is. And how it's not relevant to anyone in that room as this story breaks is beyond me.
I'm smiling thinking about the possibility of Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, these lowly ACC teams, Louisville, beating them in championship games and thanking the other athletic director and saying, thank you for standing up and coming up with that system where we get more money for winning because our win over you just netted us $3 million that you will now not get after you fought for all of us. We thank you so much.
Davey, final thought here. You're a Duke fan. Carolina is mentioned as one of the quiet seven. Do you think Duke should be on this list?
Honestly, no. And I think it just really goes back to football, even though a lot of those other schools that are on the list don't deserve to be on it.
Thank you. But it's not just about football, though. It's about having a voice.
I don't want Duke to lead the ACC.
I don't want the ACC to go under. And if I'm Jim Phillips, I'm making sure Duke is on board with everything. That's my point. It's the brands. It's not the program. It's the brands.
I don't also see that. That's why when the Duke president is saying these statements about this plan, this is not the plan that those seven wanted. This is a plan that benefits Duke, that ultimately got laid out there. Why? Because I could never envision a world where the Duke president is going to sign off on a plan that says, yeah, we'll take $7 million less than Carolina every year for no other reason than Carolina bitched about not getting more money or not being close to the SEC. They'll never sign off on that. So maybe Duke did wield some power here in the end.
Perception's reality to me, and mostly anything. And it's just weird to see Carolina listed and Duke not in the ACC. Trey will have more with us tomorrow on this as we deep dive further in what actually is bonus and what's not. When we come back, Ja Morant back in the headlines, plus gambling in college baseball. And we've got a new program to discuss with Cincinnati. That's next on the Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
And people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Hutton and Withrow with you. Hot mic across
Conversation
the OutKick
carried
network.
over into the break.
Yeah, brands in the ACC.
I
want the ACC to
people
stay.
play fantasy football. I love playing fantasy Power 5 conference. And just, you're the commissioner here. Who are you inviting? Who are you going after first? I'm here to tell you, too, I'm an SEC guy. I went to an SEC school. But all the SEC dominates. They're always going to dominate, and their brands are strong. I don't buy that if the Big Ten continues on this path. If they lock up the West Coast and add Oregon and Washington.
Are you saying that based on the $100 million per year contract that is only a memorandum of understanding?
I don't think it's going to equal 100 once they have to pay back what they've promised that they now have to pay back to other networks. But it's still a mammoth deal. And they've got a lot of networks.
There are two mammoth deals.
There is a debate to be had between the SEC approach of we're going to make millions off one conference, one network, ESPN, versus Big Ten saying we're going to make millions and spread the wealth across multiple networks. All I'm saying is there's a war that's happening. And the war is between the ACC, Pac-12, Big 12 for relevance and to stay alive and survive. And the other one is between the Big Ten and the SEC. And it's not some no-brainer between those two moving forward. It's going to be fun to follow.
Story right now from Grayson Weir, OutKick.com. University of Cincinnati, they fired 2 of their baseball staffers amid an investigation that could involve gambling. My guess is it does, because Cincinnati hasn't denied it. They also haven't confirmed it. They have not denied it. But the NCAA is looking into Cincinnati athletics and an internal review that Cincy did on their own of potential infractions involving the baseball program. Chad, the easy culprit right now in sports betting is college baseball, because it's not like MLB where I can get on the app right here on my phone and get not just the money line, but I can bet on who's going to win the inning, how many strikeouts. That's not how college baseball betting works. You bet the money line or you don't, and that's pretty much it across the board. So when you come across the table with all the chips in the middle, it's a red flag. This is going on in every sport, and college baseball is going to take the fall for it. And the only reason I say it's college baseball taking the fall, because it's easy to figure out where the red flags are based on the betting that happens. In college football, in college basketball, you can bet however much you want because there's no flag on a $1 million. Mattress Mac isn't betting on college baseball. He's putting money on the tournament. Point being, baseball is going to be used as the example, and I'm here to tell you it's going on in the major sports as well.
I wonder how many more scandals, though, we need to reach, because we've got Alabama, Iowa, Iowa State, now Cincinnati. There's going to be more. How many more do we need to reach before we say, college baseball's got a bit of an integrity issue? We haven't had the full-on.
The NCAA does.
For sure. But we haven't had the full-on we're throwing games scandal yet that I've seen from these coaches.
Right.
But we don't really know the extent of this internal investigation by Cincinnati where 2 assistant coaches got fired. They could just be betting on games. But when you're betting against your own team, because obviously you have the inside info that we're starting a bad lineup this week, or our Friday night pitcher is out and no one knows it.
Not betting against your own team. You're telling someone to bet.
This is the problem. And I'm not a college baseball fan for a lot of reasons.
Same.
But this is a big one. This is the problem with a low-rent minor league sport. It's easy to infect. There's not a ton of knowledge about it. It's very insulated. The fan base, while growing, is not enormous. And when you bet on these things, I don't consider myself someone to have a gambling problem. But for fun, sometimes I'll go on FanDuel and bet on Colombian basketball if it's being played live. I'll put on a Columbia basketball game and watch it live and put it on top of a parlay.
We bet on cricket
and
once.
I'll pick the team that's up 8 points that is somehow plus 210. And they're up 8 with 4 minutes left. Why are they at plus 210? Up 8 with 4 minutes left? Probably because Columbia basketball is not that big of a deal, and even the sports books have a hard time keeping up with it and catching up with it, and I'm betting $3 on it or whatever. It's not a big deal, right? But it's minor league. It's low rent, just like college baseball. I have seen seasoned gamblers that wager on sports constantly point out the fact that college baseball can be had early in the season, especially. They do not get the lines close to right. It's the most off when it comes to Vegas and what happens in games. Now that we're seeing actual college coaches and players take the fall in this, to me, it's a matter of time and a matter of more programs being involved before we say college baseball has a gambling issue.
But if you're fixing – so I'm really torn on this. Because if college baseball doesn't move the needle, and I'm not one to get on – I'm not betting in college baseball, okay? Same as you. The coaches clearly know who's pitching and who's not, right? So there's an assistant baseball coach at Cincinnati and a director of baseball operations who have been fired. Alabama's baseball coach, fired. There are no indications that these two at Cincinnati bet against or for or bet on college baseball at all. They're relaying information.
Have you put together yet the connection with Cincinnati and Alabama in this?
No.
Alabama's head coach was calling a guy at Great American Ballpark to place bets. So you wonder if they got info on other people either being sent there that weren't doing it online. That
But Iowa and Iowa State are also involved.
True, but I'm saying just with Alabama and Cincinnati, so I wonder if they're also going to the ballpark to place bets to not have the digital trail of doing it online, and they're catching wind of that.
And you're right to point this out because what the red flag on Bama, most apps you can bet up to $500. It's capped on college baseball. If you go to a window, you can pay cash and you can pay and bet more than $500, which is what happened in the case with Bama, apparently. So you're right. It's probably what happened in this case.
And what immediately happens
if it's tied back to this.
With the sports book at Great American Ballpark where the Reds play is when this scandal breaks and there's an unusual amount of money that's placed on a winning bet with baseball, and you come to find out that the Alabama head baseball coach had a part in it, they're going to start investigating every unusual bet involving a team multiple times, and they probably tied it back to Cincinnati baseball somehow.
Here's why I'm torn on it. This is going on in basketball and football. This is happening. And personally, I know it's happening. I don't know. I can't confirm it, but
name names.
No,
I'm kidding.
I'm not to a point. I'm just saying, deep down, I know if it's happening in college baseball, it's happening everywhere. So are we just going to crucify those who are giving information on college baseball pitching, but we're not? Everything's on the up and up because nothing's been reported on football or bat. Give me a break. This is happening at a much steeper level. I'm not that naive. And so I'm
are you saying college football coaches are making money kickbacks to people for doing it, or they're giving their buddy a
Let me tell you who was fired at Cincinnati. The assistant baseball coach and the director of baseball operations. Am I telling you the director of football operations named the university is likely to tell someone who's playing yes.
Well,
it's happening.
There's a big difference between.
And there are no injury reports in college football.
No, but hear me out. There's a big difference between calling your buddy and saying, hey, our Friday night starter isn't here. You might want to place a bet on the other team.
Not just that. He didn't get on the plane on the road trip.
Yeah, telling someone that and then making money off of it. If you're saying that college football director of operations are saying place $2,000 on this, I'm going to make $1,500 of it because they're not making a lot.
I haven't seen the story where
that's what's illegal.
I haven't seen the story where the Bama coach got paid based on the information he relayed.
I haven't seen the story where he wasn't paid either. We don't have the details on that.
That's my point,
But I assume he was paid. That's part of this whole thing.
I'm assuming if you're friends with somebody and they give you information and it's a windfall, that you're getting paid. I'm not. This is not a college baseball specific
I think college baseball, because the nature of the sport being minor league, is more susceptible to this. Do I think it doesn't happen in other sports? No, it happens in other sports.
It's a lot
I think the nature of college baseball and the fact that hardcore gamblers tell me this all the time. If you know college baseball, you can make a fortune because Vegas hasn't caught up to the sport with certain things that go on
which is why
games.
they cap it.
Yeah.
and the other sports that are uncapped.
But not at Great American Ballpark.
Uncapped. I'm just not that dumb to believe that it's not going on at a bigger level where it's not flagged because it's college football and college basketball, where it's, Mattress Mac bet $1 million. Cool. It's a headline. If he wins, great. If he loses, you get free furniture. Ha, ha, ha. But in college baseball, you're fired.
Yeah, but if Mattress Mac was taking his winnings and giving it to his informants that are within college programs, then that's illegal. Those guys should be fired for doing that.
I'm not trying to insert him into illegal whatever.
Yeah,
the guys who are making the bets are not prosecuted one bit. It's not insider trading. This is not the stock market.
No.
It's not illegal to get information and then use it in sports to bet your money on. It's not. So the guy who took the bet from the Bama coach is not under any legal jurisdiction on that.
But it is a fireable offense if you're the Bama coach or giving information and taking kickbacks from the guy after he.
I don't know that he took kickbacks. That's my point.
I think him getting fired shows us that he did.
The fact that he relayed information is why he got fired. And that's my point on the bigger sports where everyone feels like it's on the up and up. It's like NIL. All of a sudden, the players getting paid, it's like, oh, this is awful for college football. Awful, the transfer portal. I know of a high school coach who became a college coach who admitted at the podium at an introductory press conference, don't ask me about recruiting because I've been recruiting for years. This goes on at a major. This is happening at every level, and it's not. I'm not trying to point fingers. The NCAA, the NFL, everyone, they're all making money, and as soon as things come out, they want us to believe that they're on the up and up, that they're going to fire the director of baseball operations at Cincinnati while taking in the money from FanDuel. That's my point.
If you're going to say you're not naive enough to think that it's not going on in other sports, I agree with that. I'm not naive enough to think that Brad Bohannon was not receiving some cash from the guy he was giving information to. And the fact that he's calling a guy that he knew was in Cincinnati that wasn't doing it with a digital thing on his phone, that was going to a window, he was taking kickbacks. I do think there's a big difference between I'm director of football operations at ex-SEC school. Jonathan Hutton's my good buddy. He calls me. He's like, what are you feeling? I'm thinking I'm gonna place the bet on this team this week. And I say, I'd go ahead and lay your money on that, on what you were thinking. And I tell him that before a game, and him winning it and me getting nothing versus me calling buddy Jonathan Hutton and saying, hey, you're in Cincinnati, right? Go place this bet for $2,000 at the window, and we'll split the winnings together. To me, those are two very different things.
Well, but here's where we agree. It's because it's baseball. It's because in most apps, you can only bet up to $500 online. And at the window, you can place more. And point being, you can bet whatever you want to on the other sports that I'm referring to, and it's not going to be flagged online. That's my overall point.
Yeah, I do think you're right, but if you win enough, you're getting flagged. Now, that doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. You could just be good at gambling and placed a big bet and won. But everything that's abnormally large that someone's going to win, they're going to look at least. Especially if you consistently bet on one team involved in games and you're winning a ton of money, even your phone with your FanDuel or DraftKings or whatever app, they're going to look into it.
Lose enough, but then win big.
Unfortunately for me, I'm not winning enough to ever get flagged.
Yeah,
so
I'll never be involved in this. Dylan maybe on his parlays. But
I'm thrilled that I just went from $7 in my account to $42 in back-to-back nights because I bet on the Dodgers over the Braves to win on the money line. And I did it again today, too, for the clean sweep.
John Morant back in the headlines. We discuss it next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
6th and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine located right here. We're located on YouTube. You can subscribe to the OutKick channel there. Just search out OutKick. We hope you'll like and subscribe and share with your friends all of the great shows that are airing here daily and on demand. Plus, the podcast's available at OutKick.com. We hope you'll download the audio wherever you choose to subscribe to your podcast.
Hutton, tell everyone how you just described the movie There Will Be Blood, the 2007 Paul Thomas Anderson classic.
I am notorious for watching things years later than when they...
Oh, me too. There's a lot of classics I've never seen.
Even shows, though.
Yeah.
So
I'm quicker with some classic shows.
I watched There Will Be Blood for the first time over the weekend, and I'm here to say it's the most boring yet entertaining movie I've ever seen. I felt like there's tons of dialogue, but I when it ended, I'm like, I didn't really notice the dialogue. It was more about the acting.
I think this could have been the New York Times review of this movie. I mean, it really does sum it up well.
With Daniel Day-Lewis?
I found myself to be incredibly bored, yet also very entertained. I tried to start watching it again like 2 years ago. I watched it when it came out in theaters, and then I watched it again 2 years ago, and I found myself mesmerized by the first 10 to 20 minutes where it's just him.
Yes.
It's just Daniel Day-Lewis by himself trying to strike oil in California back at the turn of the century.
So,
and that's what really drew me in. But yeah, it's a wild movie.
Just real quick.
But wild yet boring movie.
Boring but entertaining. It's weird. Like it
it's
took
one
me
of
2
those
nights to get through it.
You can do something.
But I went back to it. I normally don't go back to something if I think it's awful.
If it's
and I went back to it.
If it's beautiful and well produced and well acted, it can be entertaining without being a thrill a minute type movie, and that's what that is.
Everyone points to Lincoln whenever you think of Daniel Day-Lewis. I think of Gangs of New York. This is more Gangs of New York, Daniel Day-Lewis.
I think of My Left Foot when I think of Daniel Day-Lewis.
I haven't seen it. I'll see it in
I
maybe 10 years from now.
think Phantom Thread, another one that he did with Paul Thomas Anderson.
I'll see that in 17 years from now. I'll review it for you, Chad.
That's where I learned about Munchausen by proxy syndrome. Look it up, kids. It's disturbing.
I find what John Morant put on Instagram, on social media, disturbing. It's a cry for help. He doesn't want to be the superstar. I said this a couple of weeks ago, Chad. I hope it's more than just a suspension for him. Meaning, I hope people around him, and even if it's not the people around him, I hope if it's the league, I hope it's mandatory. It's not some drive-through therapy for him. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for teenagers. It's also the second leading cause of death for people 20 to 34 years old. It's not like, I don't think John Morant's a thug. I really don't.
You think it's maybe a mental issue?
No, not even that. I just think he's in the middle of something that he doesn't want to be in, and he's posting, "Thanks, Mom and Dad, bye." And you're doing a welfare check in Memphis? Like, it's more than a headline. It's a red flag. And I hope we treat it that way, personally. It's serious.
Yeah. We'll talk more about it tomorrow.
No doubt. Join us 3 o'clock Eastern, right here for Hot Mic.